Who is Isamaya Ffrench?
That's a good question. I think I'm still working that one out.
Your work, it's wacky, wonderful, dark, fetishy, fantasy, so sexy, empowering, gorgeous, and a bit weird.
That's who I am, yeah.
You don't just push boundaries, you bulldoze through them.
I've worked with some of the most incredible people in the industry, from Madonna to Cher to Merton Marcus to Tom Ford, Rihanna.
The eyebrow that you did for Rihanna, did you realise the power of your influence?
No, I was just like, she looked great with a skinny brow, let's do it.
What's been your toughest challenge?
I think doing makeup was like my toughest challenge. I literally couldn't speak.
Oh my God. If you were a flavour, what would you be?
If I was a flavour, barbecue beef, maybe.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Rich and salty, do you know what I'm saying?
Meaty?
Yeah.
See, my go-to would be like sweet.
Of course it would be. No one fucking says barbecue beef, do they? I mean, you just caught me off guard. Because I was thinking, what flavour crisps do I like? Well, I love those Roysters, which are very beefy.
I like scampi fries. I don't want to be scampi flavoured. Like
Scampi fries.
You've obviously got your dream job.
I think, well, funnily enough, I never actually, I never intended to be here. Mm-hmm. And it kind of, I went to art school and I studied product design. So I've always wanted to do something creative. Like, I can't not be creative. I can't stop, you know. Even when I'm supposed to be having a day off, it's really hard for me to switch off.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people suffer from that, don't they? Well, it's just workaholic as well.
Yeah, I suffer from that. I can't stop.
Yeah. I was actually having a bit of a stressful summer, I think because I didn't have anything to do and I was trying to switch off. And now that I've started work again, I'm like, oh, I'm back. Mm-hmm. You know, it's funny, isn't it? You can get so stressed, but actually being busy really helps me. Mm-hmm. But so I'd always wanted to do something creative. And I was actually, my whole background is theatre and dance and performance. And, you know, I did that since I was 4 years old for like, I don't know, 20 years or something. And that was kind of what I was doing when I moved to London. And the makeup thing happened accidentally, but it started to, you know, seriously take off, and I just had to kind of stop everything else.
So you get a lot of inspiration from movies, don't you? And books and...
Yeah, right, I do. I mean, how can you not? But I have to say, I think one of the biggest inspiration for me comes from like music and travel. Mm-hmm. And I think that's because you're sort of, you know, I think inspiration comes from somewhere in the background, like your brain's doing its own thing. You're not trying to think about the next idea. The idea finds you. And I feel like with music or traveling, you experience something in one way and something's happening in the background and it comes out in a different way. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I've always felt like that. So I don't often look at other sort of artists or you know, or whoever and think, how's that going to inspire me? I think experiences do that.
I can't imagine someone like you feeling like that someone else is going to jump into your shoes, because there's no one like you. Like, if you look at all the beauty brands all over the world, you are completely unique and stand out.
Thank you.
That's true, and like completely authentic, and I'm a huge fan.
Oh,
honestly.
Thank you. Well, I think I may be speaking for my peers and my friends in the industry, and we've all discussed, you know, that there is a pressure, and there's pressure from agents, and there's pressure from you. If you step out for 5 minutes, someone will step in. Yeah. And that's just a thing I think that everybody's quite aware of. And that, you know, wasn't necessarily encouraging me to work. I just love working, but it is definitely a reality, you know, in the industry. Your flavour of the month, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So can you give me some top tips for putting lashes on? Because I can't do them.
Totally.
And they look so easy when you see see yourself and others putting them on. I'm like, how do you do it?
Well, these are great because they're very seamless. You know, I always struggle using a strip lash because your eyelids actually have quite a lot of grease on them. So throughout the day, they'll lift at the corners. Mm-hmm. But these, I'm just adding some extra bond so they last for ages. But with these ones, you're basically putting like gluey mascara on underneath and then just sticking them on. And then they just disappear into your lash line. And for me, as a makeup artist, I don't want anyone to know that you've got falsies.
What's your top tips on creating the perfect cat eye?
Well, I think, it's all about the lift, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So what I think is really helpful is making sure that you bring concealer or foundation right up to the edge of your eye.
Okay.
Because a lot of people kind of get redness around the entire, So if you've got that really good base, then you can get a nice clean line and you get that lift. You don't get the eye kind of being dragged down. Does that make sense?
So what are your tips for the perfect brow?
Well, what I've done with you, and I'll just finish it at the end, is I like to use a white pencil is just so helpful. So I like to, just exaggerate all of the sharp bits. So like I use a white pencil here, I use a white pencil under the brow line to get a really sharp line. You can even use it just like there on the edge just to, again, make that cat flick look sharper. And then you can just blend it out with a softer colour. So you don't have that white, but you've got that nice kind of highlight. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And also, I think we become so obsessed with like character lines.
That's such a good shape. Yeah.
And actually, like, we all need character lines, because otherwise you'd look like a mad kind of like porcelain jar if you didn't have any lines on your face. It's like
it's so funny. Like the people's faces I love do have character and do have lines, and they haven't got perfect teeth, and they've got like a little...
Yeah. I think I'd really...
But then on yourself, you're so critical. Oh, look so old. I've got these lines.
Oh, God, I saw a really, like, cheesy thing the other day, but it is relevant. And it was someone talking about how, you can't capture a beautiful sunset in a picture.
No, you can't.
You've got this gorgeous sunset. You try and take a picture of it, and it always looks shit. It's like in real life, you're a 3 or 4D dimensional entity, and just one picture is not going to express the gorgeousness of you.
No.
And I think we forget that, don't we? That that a picture is supposed to...
Well, I thought it was interesting when someone asked you, like, how you define beauty. And you were like, it's so personal, you can't really explain what it is because it's different for everybody.
Yeah. My mum, I look at her and she doesn't wear a spot of makeup. She's, like we said earlier, she's a total sun worshipper, so she's covered in freckles. I'd be devastated if she went and got rid of all of her little lines and her character lines.
Yeah.
She's so beautiful to me.
Yeah.
And I think confidence is the most, it's cliche, innit? But it is the most...
And kindness.
And kindness.
Like, people you love are more beautiful. Have you ever seen, like, a gorgeous...
Horrible person.
Gorgeous, horrible person, a shallow hell?
Yeah, didn't Roald Dahl did a funny little comic illustration, and it was basically about that. It was about how, ugliness develops sort of from the inside out.
Yeah.
And the kinder you are, yes, the more beautiful and attractive you are. I think that's really valid.
I think that's so valid as well. Do you get starstruck? You've painted the faces of some of the biggest stars on the planet.
I mean, the person who I was really, really starstruck by, and I literally couldn't speak, and I was so angry with myself afterwards, because I was like, I've wanted to meet this person my entire life, was Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I love him.
I almost fell over, and I was like, damn it, all I've ever wanted was to meet him and to tell him how much I love him.
He's a ledge. I love him.
Yes, and obviously Cher is fab and Madonna's fab.
What's it like painting their faces, seeing them up close? And
well, I mean, what is wonderful about working with people, of that caliber of talent, and also who have been so influential for like decades.
Yeah, and reinvent themselves constantly. They're probably up for everything, aren't they?
They know way more than you'll ever know.
Yeah.
I feel like I get, I sit down with Cher and I have a masterclass. And that is what a fucking luxury is that, and she knows her face. Madonna knows her face. They know what they want. And it's such a privilege to feel like they trust me and they like my work, because I'm learning so much from them at the same time. So,
and what's been your proudest moment work-wise?
I don't think I've got there yet. Really? I think hopefully that's to come. Yeah, I think a
pinch me moment.
I mean, there are days when I step back and I go, wow, we've built a brand. And I go, wow, look at that Stephen Klein campaign that we did. And he's amazing. And
amazing.
It is working with these other people. They're the pinch me moments. It's never anything I do. It's the people that are willing to involve themselves in my world and how, like, I suppose, grateful and lucky I feel. That's the pinch me moment.
Of course, I know who you are. I am literally your biggest fan, and I cannot believe you've done my makeup today.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. But can you, for people who might not know who you are, who is Isamaya Ffrench?
That's a good question. I think I'm still working that one out. I'm a makeup artist. I'm a brand founder. The Isamaya Beauty brand is my brand, and I am a creative director and have worked with many other beauty brands for the last decade, really, helping to sort of shape and define and creative direct them. And I'm still working out if that's who I am. Yeah.
So you fell into this world. So you started at Central St. Martin's.
Yeah.
You left it. You felt it wasn't for you.
Yes.
And then, am I correct that you were doing kids face painting?
Yeah, I mean, oh gosh, yes. I went to St. Martin's to study industrial design, product design. And I was like 2 years in, I was like, I do not want to be like redesigning the Heinz ketchup bottle. Do you know what I mean? And I dropped out, and my whole background had been in theatre and performance, and I'd been dancing, and I was a competitive highboard diver.
No way.
Yeah, I travelled around England doing competitions for years. So performance and like movement was very much...
It's in your blood.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that's quite evident with the work that you do.
Well, when I left university, I joined a performance company, a theatre group, and we toured the world, and I continued doing that. And actually, that was massively informative in how I work now. You know, character development, energy, performance, world building. And the face painting thing happened because I just needed a job. You know, I dropped out of uni. My parents were like, purse zipped up, not getting anything else. Thanks, mum and dad. And they were like, look, this is your choice. You've got to work out how to do it now. And so I had no money. I was sharing a tiny bed with my boyfriend at the time in a tiny flat. And my sister has these two lovely kids, and she was like, oh, can you do some face painting at their school fete? And I was like, sure. And I did it. And I was like, I'm actually quite good at this.
I'm good at this.
So I booked myself on like a quick face painting for kids course, learnt some body painting techniques, and that was it. I was off doing like all the rich families in Hampstead. I was on the Bishop's Avenue every week, had to wear this god-awful like fairy costume most of the time, which is...
I thought you'd like that.
Burnt that.
I thought you'd like a little fairy outfit.
Yeah, very me. And that's how it happened. And so I was getting all this practice, which sort of sounds silly, but actually you've got to be really good at blending. You've got to be quick, dealing with people, kids falling asleep in your chairs. And there are still adults that fall asleep in my chair sometimes. And then because I was in this sort of world of theatre and East London and performance, there was a photographer who asked me to do some body painting for a shoot for ID magazine. I didn't know what ID magazine was. And I turned up with all my kit and all my sort of messy brushes and whatever and did it. And I was like, I'm doing this on adults and I really love it. And that was it. And I just knew that I could continue doing something like that.
So would you say that was your break into the industry?
Yes,
because,
definitely.
you know, you've worked with some of the biggest names in the biz throughout your 20s, which is, you know, a huge achievement. You know, when did you start to get noticed?
Well, I think, you know, for me, it's been a kind of a steady progression, actually.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't hop from face painting into, you know, developing cosmetics for Tom Ford. There were a few sort of steps, and that was what was really nice about it. I think when I came into the industry, I was this super young, you know, I must have been about 22 or something. Instagram was just kicking off. And I had a very, very naive approach to makeup. I had been face painting, and that's what I did for a couple of years.
So there's like no pressure?
No pressure. I was having fun. I was doing these like, I think looking back, it just must have felt naive and fresh and maybe a bit of a contrast to what the industry had been, which was, I suppose
perfection, beauty, beautiful.
And you have these industry giants, the Pats and the Charlottes and all these Val and all these amazing people that had really like held on to their place in the industry and defined it for so many years. Yeah. And, they're so inspiring for me, all of that whole generation of makeup artists. And I just think Instagram democratized everything, definitely makeup artistry, because suddenly you didn't just have to see it in a magazine. You could be a makeup artist from your bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
And I really feel, I give a lot of credit to what Instagram did for me as an artist.
Yeah. So many makeup artists making a lot of money doing those kind of at-home videos. Yeah. Like my kids are obsessed with watching them. Do you use Instagram a lot as a big platform to spread the Isamaya word?
Yeah, well, I think it was always like my portfolio.
Yeah,
and we're going back like 15 years, and it's mad to think that I've probably got 15 years worth of Instagram content. I feel like the whole beginning of my career, that's where I could just express myself freely. And actually, as my career has gone on and I've got more responsibility and I represent other brands now and not just myself, my relationship with it has changed. And I can't say whatever I want. And I'll often post things and I'll get someone from the brand going, take it down, And
is that hard?
It's really hard.
Because you don't just push boundaries, you bulldoze through them. So to kind of...
Well, I think when something's been a platform of authentic expression for such a long time, to suddenly have to censor yourself because something you do might not sit well with someone else. And I'm very much a believer of like, well, don't look if you don't like it.
Yeah.
It can be hard. And you just have to, remember that things change and it's business now.
Yeah. So I think for me, that's one of the things that stands out, like how authentic you are, even though looking at your work, it's wacky, wonderful, dark, fetishy, fantasy, but it's so true to you, and you feature in so many of your own campaigns, you do your own makeup, you are your own brand. Tell me a bit more about your brand.
Well, thank you.
I love it. Like I am obsessed, and everything's so sexy, empowering, gorgeous, and a bit weird.
Very weird. I think that's
I like weird.
Yeah,
it's interesting, and it's break from the norm. And
thank you. Well, I mean, because I have worked for a number of makeup brands previous to mine. I worked for Tom Ford. I developed by Rideau Cosmetics, Christian Louboutin. I was the Burberry global makeup director for years and
beauty editor of magazines as well.
Yeah, so I've had a real education, and varied one as well. All these brands have a very different point of view on beauty, and it's a sort of a luxury position to be working with lots of different minds and different opinions on beauty. And it got, lockdown happened, and I sort of said to myself, there's so much more I have in me that I want to offer to the beauty industry as well.
Yeah.
I have to do my own brand. And a couple of years before that, I'd launched a platform called Dazed Beauty. And Dazed Beauty was like the sister sort of magazine to the Dazed fashion magazine. And for me, I had always felt like there was, with social media, there were so many unheard voices out there, young kids, sort of people that didn't or were unable to perhaps get the attention or have their work out there. And I wanted to create a platform that would help expose some of that and offer these young kids and offer these creatives who would never get a chance to be in a magazine or would never get a chance to have their work recognized, a platform and a space to do that. And it was also, a place where we were very supportive of the LGBTQ plus community, and I suppose all communities that maybe felt undervalued or appreciated. So that
unheard.
And that was for me so important because they're all my communities too. And
why do you feel you connect so well with that kind of community? Would you say you represent the underdog?
Well, it's a good question. I just feel like everybody deserves a space. And I feel like, especially in a creative environment, you need diversity. You need other points of view. You need to celebrate all sorts of people and opinions. And so that's how things progress and move forward. So I set up Days Beauty, and it's still going now, and I don't work there anymore, but it was also an opportunity to work with new emerging artists in the technology space. So we were the first digital cover. We worked with Kate Moss and Travis Scott, who became these amazing kind of like 3D centaurs. And I was obsessed with the work of all of these amazing 3D artists. Travis Brothers was in there, Brian Rivera, Kaveh Kainem. You know, it's only even sort of now in the last year, and that was 2018, that people have started really build, you know, avatars and digital stuff. And maybe it came
ahead of the times.
I think so, actually. I think so. And I think there was a lot of confusion from the people that I was working with as to like, ooh, what is this? Like, and I was like, technology, man, that's where it is. That's the future of beauty. We need to lean into it. We need to not just be working with photographers, but working with CGI creatives. And here we are now.
But do you think
AI.
timing is important though? Because I've spoke to quite a lot of people on this podcast about timing, and maybe they've been too ahead of the game for that time, and it hasn't worked. Do you feel any of that?
I think so. And I think, you know, something like Days Beauty, for example, I think it was ahead of the time.
Yeah.
I feel proud to say that. But that's okay. Some things land and some things don't. And, you know, if we didn't manage to make that side work, at least we opened the doors to a community that might not have had the representation that it did. And for me, that's way more important.
So for creatives who are looking to start their careers, what advice would you give them?
It's always, you know, starting your career, and especially now where you constantly have to produce. I mean, you know this. It's not a case of doing one thing and focusing on one thing. You've got to do so much other content to support it. It's like constantly having to create.
Yeah.
And I do think beneath it all, authenticity, we've talked about it, is the most important and the most sort of standout thing, I think, as people. And especially audiences now and younger audiences, they can sniff out if you're not being authentic, and then they're not interested.
Yeah.
So don't, you know, I don't know if fake it till you make it really works anymore. I think you have to be authentic. And, you know, talking about authenticity, I recently went to Mongolia, and I've actually been, you know, having a brand is wonderful, but it also comes with complexity. You know, I started as a creative makeup artist. I had this big creative vision. And of course, the brand has now over time, you know, if you want to talk about it like animistically, it's got its own personality and persona now. And it needs other things. And there are other people involved who have their own agendas. And I think for me, there's always this inner battle where I'm like, I just want to be myself because I know that that's the right thing to be. And then you have other people going, you got to do that TikTok. You got to do this. You got to do that. You know, you got to be like them. This is trending. How you grow. This is trending.
Yeah.
And it was really, you know, it's very difficult for me to lean into something that I don't feel that I align with.
Well, to conform.
And maybe.
Creatives do not conform. They don't follow anyone else. They're the leaders. So,
well, that's what I believe. And I think sometimes that message is, again, very difficult when you have business people involved in brands. That's a form of risk taking because there is no data to show how taking that risk will result. You know, there's a lot of, and that's, you know, I think playing safe because there's the safety in the numbers. So if you do though, we know that TikTok works. We know that this gets results. But what about the risk? You know, and I'm a risk taker. Thank God I don't do investments because God, I'd probably lose all my money. Like all high risk.
Well, talking of risks, I've got the penis lipstick. How did you convince people that this was a good idea?
I don't even think I did have to do any convincing.
Well, I love it.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, again, for me, I was just like, we've just got to do it. You know, I've just got to do it. There was no question. I genuinely don't know where the idea came from. I had to do it. It didn't exist, and I couldn't understand why it didn't exist because it's the most obvious thing in the world. But you know, I do feel like there's an element of what I do that is tapped into the bigger conversations.
Yeah.
Like you called it the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
I think I'm just sort of inferring what I pick up on in my job, in culture, in traveling. And when I developed the penis lipstick, in the background, and I only realized this afterwards, there was so much going on globally around bodies and conversations around identity and gender and nudity and abortion laws in America and trans rights movements and all of these conversations that led to me feeling like doing a penis lipstick is the right time.
I think you've created a brand that blurs the lines between beauty and art. You know, that is like a piece of art, isn't it? You know, that is something, obviously, we've got the refill, so we can use it forever. But, you know, that could go
well, you know,
on the shelf.
That's what I want. That's what I wanted. And I think, you know, when I was thinking about doing a brand, I've worked for hundreds of brands, probably every brand you can think, like major brand you can think of. I've worked, whether it's shooting campaigns, whether it's do creative direction, whatever. And I did feel like there was a space for something that went a step further than just makeup, that was really telling a story, was like an object you'd want to have in your house. And so also, again, because I work in fashion, I'm so used to that sort of exciting, trend-led, seasonal-led creative. You know, every season it's different. Something new. And I just couldn't imagine what a brand would look like if it had to sit on the shelf for 10 years. So I said, I don't want to do it. I want to have these exciting drops. I want to hit loads of different makeup communities. You've got the BDSM, you've got the like girly wild style, you've got whoever wants to, you know, buy a penis, the grands.
I want to be the cowgirl.
Yeah, but and I think that's what's been really nice is I haven't had to conform to one thing. I can have loads of fun and continue, you know, enjoying what I put out there.
But there is still that undercurrent of beautifulness throughout all your products. They are like wacky and wild and sexy and hot and naughty, but they are all still beautiful.
Well, thank you. And I have to say, you know, it's sometimes it's difficult to focus on just one, you know, multiple things. But I spend hours in the labs developing.
So how does that process go? So you know, from packaging to getting the product on the shelf, like how important is sustainability, ingredients?
Yeah, it's all important. There's no way I'm going to release something that I don't feel really proud of or I don't want to wear. And I go to Italy. I do all the development in Italy. Yeah, all the packaging's in Italy. And it's funny because, you know, even just developing a lipstick shade, you'll work for hours and hours and hours and think you've got it, you know, a bit more yellow, a bit more pink, a bit whatever. You know, I work literally with the lab techs and then they go off and they add a bit more color and, you know, 0.1 gram of this pigment in to bring it up to that color. It's super technical. And you think you've nailed it. And then you step outside in it and it's a fucking different light. And you're like, oh my God, I've got to go through that whole process again. Yeah. So it's a very technical part of my job.
But fun.
Yes, of course. It's fun.
Do you have any help with all the packaging ideas or is it just all coming from your head?
No, well, I have the theme and the story and the world building. And then I have an amazing team and I work with a girl called Tiff who is like a really close friend of mine now. And she's a wonderful art director. And so, you know, I work with her on like mood boards and then for example, the palette, the industrial palette, I worked with CGI artists that I really love. And I said, look, I've got this idea and I want a vacuum form body and I'll do a sketch of the vac body and then they'll come back and show it. So it's a real kind of, yes, I have all of these ideas, but I love collaborating with artists and creatives. Yeah.
Well, I guess more heads are better than one.
Well, definitely.
Definitely. Yeah. Where do you see the brand going or where is it going or where do you know it's going?
I know where it's going. Yeah. Well, the next step for me, next year is going to be a really exciting year because, you know, it's taken me a couple of years to, I guess it's allowed me to really think about what does that 10-year
object look like? What
Yeah.
will I love the look of and be able to kind of feel excited about on the long term? And I'm super passionate about the future of beauty and the interplay with technology and ingredients, and how does that then look like? What does that object look like? And I love materials and I love metals. So the whole of the next, 5
Your
years.
tools are quite kinky looking.
Well, the next collection won't be far off that.
But they're so pretty as well, aren't they? Do you know what I mean?
Well, I love, I like to have nice things in my bathroom,
You've come in with all these incredible products. How did you do that?
God, don't know. I mean, I there's no way that I would have come into this industry and put cheap stuff out there.
Yeah.
And I'm really passionate about the charities that we work with. Every single drop that I do, we work with a charity and donate and raise awareness. And so sustainability is something that we think about. And also, again, I'm so lucky. I've worked with some of the most incredible people in the industry, from Madonna to Cher to Merton Marcus to Tom Ford, Rihanna. Like, I just,
Which was quite a debate. The eyebrow that you did for Rihanna. Did you realise how the power of your influence?
No, I was just like, she'd look great with a skinny brow. Let's do it.
So how much prep goes, like, say, tomorrow you're working with Madonna, you're working with Rihanna, how much prep goes into it? Or do you just sit in front of these people and like, right, I'm going, and just wing it?
Oh, I always wing it. Of course. But I mean, like, it gets to a point where I always feel like this is a collaborative journey. So I'm not going to just unless it's my creative and it's my creative direction and my shoot, I'm not going to bulldoze in and just tell someone what they have to wear, because unless they want me to.
I'm always scared to tell a makeup artist what I want.
I love to hear it, because at the end of the day, especially if it's like a personal thing, I want to know what makes you feel good. I want to know what you like. Otherwise, what's the point? It's just a kind of narcissistic makeup artist show. And that's not what the work's about, is it? It's about, so, when you say, how do you approach everything? Well, it's always different. If it's an editorial and you're part of the bigger creative, you might have your own ideas. But then if, we're doing you for a red carpet, I want to know what you're wearing and I want to know what is going to make you feel amazing.
I was so jealous of Rita Ora's makeup in the VFAs. So she had
did you like it?
Like the gills. When do you ever get time to switch off? Or are your creative juices always flowing? Do you ever feel burnt out by that?
Oh my God, I burnt out like 20 times. Really. I mean, it really is something that's kind of something I have to manage. And as I get older and as I have more responsibility, protecting yourself from burnout is so important. And, in my 20s, I look back and I'm like, I don't understand how I did all that. And I was cycling like 25 miles a day and I was doing like 10K runs and I was doing this, that, I was just like at it. That was just who I was. And I was churning out so much work and I was getting no sleep and I was on planes. And I think there had to come a point where my body was just like tapping out,
Yeah.
So I have had a few serious burnouts, and I think, like anyone, as you get older, you realize that going 100 miles an hour all the time actually doesn't get you the best results, and you have to take that time off and allow your brain to just slob out. Because I'm a huge believer in things like, I think it was a Carl Jung quote where he said, you don't find ideas, ideas find you.
Yeah.
And allowing and believing and trusting in your brain to do the work in the background and let it do its thing and let it find you, rather than pressurizing yourself to come up with things all the
Something
time.
new. Yeah.
But it's a massive sort of fault maybe of the industry and of social media, where you feel like you've got to produce all the time. Otherwise, you're going to be
Replaced
or irrelevant. And if I think about the people that I think are really cool, they're not the people that are putting out work 24/7.
Who do you think's cool?
So, for example, someone like 070 Shake, doesn't have a huge social media presence, puts out these fucking amazing albums, and I'm captivated.
Yeah.
And that's and you know, Danny has a really strong fan base, and I think there's lots of people like that who don't conform to this constant requirement from, you know, society to produce all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe also why we're so captivated by celebrities sort of pre-90s, because they were a bit inaccessible.
Yeah,
and we
course.
were like, that enigma holds so much currency that we just don't have anymore.
So for anyone who is at the point of burnout, what advice would you give to them?
I think it really is, you know, of course I can say, be really careful and be good to yourself and take time out and all this stuff. I think sometimes, honestly, you've just got to get there. Life is a personal journey, and it doesn't matter how much advice you're given.
Mm-hmm.
If you're the kind of person that's going to burn out, you'll keep burning out. You'll keep pushing yourself till you burn out, and you need to go through that sometimes to come out the other side and go, I know what I need to do for myself. Because we all have different levels and limits, you know. And in a way, yes, you can give advice, but the journey's your own, you know. And I think sometimes, at least for me, perhaps I actually needed to. There was no stopping me. I needed to get to that level in order to see the other side.
How would you say the beauty industry has changed throughout your career so far?
I mean, that question in itself is a much bigger conversation. But I think in a few ways, for example, number of assets and time and money, you know, those things have really changed. I used to, back in the day, would have, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, however many hours to do makeup for a show, and now I get 2. You know, so now often when I come in, not always, but a lot of the time, I'll be working with a designer and I'll have to go, look, it's a lip or an eye. You can't have both because we don't have the time or the resources. You know, financially things have really shifted. Again, that massive demand for like assets, and TikTok and Instagram are now 2 incredibly powerful platforms that are now sort of just synonymous with every single brand that there is, and they didn't exist before. And I think there's just, in many ways, Instagram was great, obviously, because we said it sort of democratized beauty in many ways, but it also
But the high-end brands need them as well, don't they?
Well, it's also a challenge now because there's just so many more people doing the same thing, fighting for that space. So I suppose there's some of the ways that it's changed.
What would you say the ultimate standout moment of your career has been?
I have to say there have been so many amazing moments, and the brand has obviously been one of them. Working with my icons, like Cher, like Madonna, like Rihanna, was just amazing for me. And obviously, you know, having a brand in Selfridges, which is like my go-to beauty haul. There's, you know, lots of really lovely moments.
What has been your toughest challenge?
My toughest challenge? Well, there have been a few. I mean, with the brand, one of the hardest things is retaining that authenticity when you've got, you know, a hall of mirrors around you screaming like, do this, do that, be more like this, be more like that, and trying to maintain a sense of like authenticity is really hard. And
how do you do that?
Well, you know what's funny? So I went to Mongolia a couple of weeks ago, and you know, I have been struggling recently with these like constant demands from people to do these and you know, be like this, do this, post this, whatever. And I was in Mongolia, and I didn't wear makeup for 2 weeks. I probably wore the same pair of knickers for 3 days in a row. I was digging holes and shitting in them. And because I do that, by the way. I know you think I don't. And, you know, and like hanging out with local people. And I was, you know, recorded all of it because I was on this trip to meet this reindeer herd. And I think I haven't felt as much as myself in 10 years than I did on that trip. And what I posted on Instagram, which was just very honest, real life, day-to-day stuff, the amount of love and engagement and attention that I got from my community.
Yeah. Just being you.
Just being me.
Doing a simple thing.
Yeah. I was like, this is kind of what the trips brought back for me. It's that realization of just be yourself, because actually that's what people want and that's what they relate to. And it was a massive learning for me. Just cut out the noise. You know, if you don't want to do it because you're not that person, don't do it.
What's been your most toughest makeup challenge?
I think doing Rihanna's makeup in the 45-degree heat of the Arizona desert and not being allowed to step in for touch-ups for the whole day was the toughest challenge that I've ever had.
Why can't you step in?
So we were shooting a video for, she'd sung the soundtrack to Star Trek. And I was turning her into this kind of mad desert alien. So,
of course you were.
Of course I was. That's what I'm hired for. So, so I was doing this kind of mad tattoo down her face, and I was getting rid of her eyebrows, and we were kind of covering her in these freckles and whatever. And I remember getting out to the desert, and her manager was like, right, you've got 2 hours. It's 40 degrees outside and you're not allowed to do any touch-ups. And so I was just like, I can't. She could be sweating, she could be singing and performing.
Yeah.
And I had my special effects team with me, and I was like, we're going to have to
Sharpie this?
We're going to have to, we're going to have to rebuild her skin with alcohol makeup, which is like what you'd use in the prosthetics industry to do wounds and special effects and stuff. And it's basically makeup that's activated with alcohol, like pigment, and then just sets and doesn't move. So we literally had to, you basically flick the product on so it just splatters, and you just splatter layer after layer of different tones and different colors to create skin texture.
Wow.
And it was one of the most stressful jobs of my life, because then I had to do, you only get one shot, and it's Rihanna, and it was my first ever job with her, and I must have been like 24 or something.
Oh my gosh.
And she looked great.
Yeah, it must be so daunting putting something out there into the world to be judged, to be consumed, that something that's just come from your brain. And, are people do you ever think, oh God, are they going to like it? Are they going to hate it?
I think because of my career, and I'm always just putting stuff out, and it lands, and then I move on to the next thing. And I think with everything that I do, I tend not to sort of wallow in the ifs and the what ifs, and I just move on. Like, I'm an Aries, if you want to get into astrology, and I'm a bit of a bulldozer, and I don't have time to sit and I don't want to sit and worry. I'll just move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. And actually, for people who are trying to break into the industry, a lot of people I speak to who are also, my peers and great makeup artists and whatever, they worry so much about the last thing that they did. And they worry so much about, get over it, dude. Move on. If it's shit, well, it was shit. Move on. Don't let that hamper your creativity and your drive, because you will do shit stuff sometimes. I've done loads of crap. 15 years, you're going to make mistakes. And if you let those things navigate your path, it's a lot harder.
You're never going to grow.
You just got to
take it as a lesson and move on.
Move on. And if people judge you, whatever, who cares?
Yeah.
It's just difficult, isn't it? Because I think with social media, you can feel like a lot of people do have an opinion, but you're like a drop in the ocean. There's billions of people out there, and imagine if you took everything on board.
Well, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going out on Saturday night. I'm going to try and sleep in this
like
eye till then.
In a coffin. You're not allowed to move.
Yeah, but I literally sleep like that, like, on my face. So got to wake up like that. But thank you.
I've had a great time.
One of my icons, and I love you, and you are even better in person.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Isamaya!